everyone, and welcome to our latest UX Insider Talk. Today's talk is on identifying your transferable skills, and we're going to have a live Q&A with Melanie and Eoghain. So my name is Kelly. You will know me from the Slack channels and maybe through email, but today Melanie and Eoghain are going to be the main people that you'll be speaking to. So over to you guys. Melanie, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. I see everyone starting to say hello in the chat. If you want to also put in where you are located, that would just sort of help us know where you are in the world. So my name is Melanie Polkosky, and I, like many of you, have had a very weird kind of career. I actually started out in education, and then I moved into clinical speech language pathology. And I worked with people with severe disabilities, which is how I got introduced to assistive technology. From there, I went to graduate school and got a PhD in cognitive psychology, and that's when I entered the field of UX. So I've been working in UX now for just over 20 years, and I have worked in a variety of different settings, from large in-house tech companies to small startups. I've worked with agencies, freelanced, and big consultancies. So I will be helping to field questions today. Eoghain?
Hi, I'm Eoghain. Many of you may have already met me as one of the career advisors here at UX Design Institute, but my work history really starts out kind of in a variety of different roles. I suppose the most relevant being starting off with a bit of web development. That's where I really got my first taste of UX. And then from there, I ended up leveraging all my technical skill set in terms of recruitment. I was actually brought in as a technical expert recruiter, and I worked in a variety of roles from agency right through to some of the larger tech companies like Google. And then since then, I've become a career advisor, and I'm utilizing all my my career's knowledge to help you all find roles. So it's great to be here.
Nice one. Thank you both. And thank you everyone sharing where they're from. It's nice to see the variety. Okay, so we've got a few students who already said they would like to come on with their camera on and speak to you both and talk about their backgrounds. And I guess you both will then help them identify their transferable skills. So I'm just going to have a quick look and see if some of those people are here. Also, if you've got any questions, please type them into the questions panel and we can share them on screen and answer them as well. Also, if you didn't speak to me in advance and you would like to come on, you can just let us know. So we've got Gavin mentioned he would like to join, so I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to invite you to participate, Gavin, so you should see a little invitation pop up. And I will also ask Irene. So you guys should get a little invite now and pop up on screen. Hi, Gavin.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Is the mic working?
Yep,
You're coming through loud and clear.
Wonderful.
Lovely. And I see Irene is just coming online now. But Gavin, why don't you start by telling us what your background is and what your skill set is, and we'll go from there.
Largely, it's I grew up in a retail background. My parents owned a retail shop and a post office and stuff like that. And I was working behind the till from the age of 11. And I've done lots of retail stuff during my life. And then largely it's been politics. I've been a city councillor. I stood for Parliament once. I've worked on councils. I've worked in charities with vulnerable people, from the homeless sector to now autism and elderly care and stuff like that. Really, I've never had like one job. I've never had one career. I've been kind of all over the place, really. And this is potentially, a means for me to kind of get my poop together and identify a career. That's something that I can stay in for a bit.
Awesome. So Gavin, when you think about like all the things you've done, and I can also say like that resonates for me personally and probably a lot of people on today, because we've changed careers a lot. We have a lot of different things we've done. When you think back over your career, what do you see as the things that feel familiar in UX or skills that you've used in other places?
Well, ultimately, the exercise of actually thinking about it before this webinar has been very helpful, because ultimately it doesn't matter whether it's something like physical or whether it's something to do with your job and how they run things or whatever. It's always a case of I think that could be done better, and I think my problem has always been how to engage with other people to get them to become stakeholders in making change and making things better, as rather than me saying, oh, I think this is what we need to do, actually getting them on board so that they feel that they've had a stake in making things better in the longer run. So I don't think it's necessarily physical to do. It's not necessarily to do with tech or stuff that we use on a daily basis. It's also to do with the kind of real world things as well. So I don't know.
Definitely. I mean, I encourage everyone in the audience too to just sort of type in. I mean, when you think about what Gavin is saying, what kind of skills are you seeing that he would have, right? I mean, one that jumps out for me is an orientation toward people. I mean, the core of all of the jobs that you've done so far are really focused on people at their center, right? So you're doing things to support and encourage people, which is what UX is all about. So that emotional intelligence that you've developed over the course of all these different jobs will really, really help you in UX. That's essentially the core of UX, is bringing emotional intelligence and prioritizing people to business. So that is a huge skill, right? And an orientation that you can really help a lot of companies develop more robustly. If we sort of look at what's happening in the chat, a lot of people are mentioning the word empathy, which, I think of as part of emotional intelligence, adaptability, listening to people, absolutely. I love that one. It flew by fast. Anne is saying the variety of knowledge. I agree with that too, right? So you have a lot of inherent understanding of people, what their needs are, what their skills are, and you probably have a much more realistic view of how much people use technology, right? For those of us on this, right, having a around the world webinar is something it's every day for us, but it's completely foreign to a huge percentage of the worldwide population. So even that, recognizing that most people don't use technology because they think technology is cool. They use it because in some cases they have to now, right? And they don't really understand it. Other skills that are coming up in the chat: confidence and communication skills, desire to improve, absolutely. And all of that, adaptability you've been learning and flexibility you've been learning are all important to the UX role. Oh, do you want to jump in here as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree with everything you said there, Melanie. But the thing that it was immediately obvious to me straight away was actually the fact that Gavin actually has been working with multiple stakeholders across various areas. I mean, both in charities, in politics, etc. So I mean, that is a skill set in and of itself that I feel is really something that a lot of people don't emphasize enough, is being able to actually interact and work with people at various different levels within organizations. And this is one of the prime skills that I would actually really say is really important, particularly from a recruitment perspective. It is something that will get you noticed by recruiters. So definitely that definitely does tie in with exactly what Melanie has been saying, but obviously slightly different perspective here from the recruitment side. But that definitely is something that I would say is really well worth highlighting, is that you do work with multiple stakeholders at different levels. You can actually communicate effectively with them. And that's something highly valued in UX.
Okay, so how would you basically put that across? I mean, I say when you apply for a traditional job, a traditional job, it's very much a kind of, well, this is your career path. So if you're kind of entering a new career entirely, and you're saying, well, frankly, I've never had a career as such, it's quite a difficult thing, I would think, to put across. So,
well, to be honest, I think you've had a head start on that. Like, we're all in a new era where it's expected that people will change careers at least 3 to 4 times in their lifetime. The idea of having one consistent career for your entire life has kind of gone out the window in the last probably 10 to 15 years. So definitely, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. I would say really it is all about how you frame your experience. It really comes down to how you're going to actually put it forth in your CV, in your cover letters, and how you actually present it within interviews as well. Most of the time it is down to framing the experience as something being relevant. So normally what I would suggest on the CV front is really listing out all of your skills, including transferable skills. Highlight the fact that you actually have strong interpersonal communication skills, strong empathy building skills, and the ability to communicate with people at various different levels in an organization. I think that's definitely going to be quite important on there. But you can also include that in the descriptions of what you've actually done within your previous roles. That's definitely the first point I would make there. I would say in an interview, it's a little bit easier to do that, in that you can actually talk directly to the panel and really frame that experience, give them the context of what you were doing. I don't know if you've got anything to add there, Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where the resume and the portfolio become really important, right? To give you an example, I was talking to a UXDI student last week, as a matter of fact, and he was explaining to me, how he had leadership skills and empathy. And we were looking at his portfolio, and the question I asked him is, okay, I see case studies here that are emphasizing the deliverables of these projects, right? What did you produce in terms of, a journey map, a wireframe, a design, right? Where is the stuff about leadership? Where is a case study that highlights your ability to collaborate? Where is your case study that highlights your ability to communicate with particularly executives, right? How can you bring that forward through the way you describe the work that you've done? Because it's not just about producing a thing. I mean, that's important too, right? But that's part of the story. You have to bring people along on the journey as you do that. How did you convince executives or, even other engineers that you have to work with that what you want them to do is important, right? So I would really encourage you to think about think about your resume and your portfolio from that frame. How are you describing the experiences you've had? And how can you better emphasize your ability to tell a story and compel people, negotiate, collaborate? All of these are really important. Does that help, Gavin?
Yeah, great.
Awesome. How about if we move on to Irene? Irene, would you like to share a little bit about your background and your...
Hi, everyone. So I grew up between Argentina and Spain. So I'm used to move my friends and people, cultures, and everything. They look similar, but they are not. I lived also in Germany and in the UK, in different places. I normally move a lot and change and meet people from different cultures all the time. That's something that is quite easy for me. It just comes naturally. And I adapt. And I also move away from the comfort zone all the time. But as when now I'm getting older, and it's getting harder to do that. So a couple of years ago, my background is in graphic design, mainly in marketing, working in a team. And then I decided that I was going nowhere doing brochures. And I always like to have feedback from actually the people that actually was looking at my design or using the stuff I was designing. So I said, why not to move to UX? But it's a whole new thing. And I had a project, and I applied for a job in UX as a graduate, like a starting point. And I created a project, and they absolutely love it. I got the interview, but they said that I didn't have the skill for analysis. At that moment, it was like a heartbreak. But 2 months later, my husband's company was looking for a UX junior. So they gave me the opportunity. I showed the same project. They like it. So I started working in that company for now 2 years. The problem is that no one there knows about design or UX. They are all engineers. So I was completely on my own, reading stuff as much as I could, trying to learn as fast as I could. But I still, after 2 years, still think or feel the analysis part is not my my strength. So I just would like to know how could I learn that part, or how can I train my brain to learn analysis again? Because most of them are engineers, so analysis is like comes naturally for them. But I struggle, and it takes me ages to do some analysis. So just wondering.
Yeah, so Irene, just to clarify a little bit, when you say the term analysis, what do you mean by that term? Because it can mean a lot of different things to different people.
Yeah, so we do user research with our clients, and then I gather hours and hours of interviews, and then how can I separate? For me, is everything important? Every single detail counts. But for the engineers, they just want the specs straight away. So it's started, I have a bunch of information, and then they just need one piece of it. And I don't know how to separate it from the context.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is several different things happening here, right? And I can see some people relating with what's happening for you. What I'm hearing is that your company is relatively immature in terms of its UX practice, right? So, and you're still the only designer on the team?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the sort of first stage of UX maturity for any company, is that they kind of go from not having any UX at all to typically hiring a designer and expecting them to do it all, right? You're a team of one, which is a real challenge. I started out my career that way as well, and it's really, really difficult. There are still lots of companies around that are relatively immature in their development of UX. I think the other thing I'll say is that the two major job roles of UX also, kind of run the gamut of skills, right? On the design side, you have people who don't have a lot of formal background, not even a certificate like you guys are getting, and are trying to do design, all the way to people who have, formal education in graphic design, for example. On the research side, there's even a wider sort of range of skills, right? You have people who don't have a lot of background in research, all the way to someone like me who has a PhD specifically in how to do research with people, right? Mm-hmm. So it's I do not deny that it's a major challenge. So I guess what I would ask you is, for yourself, do you enjoy doing analysis, or is it something that's really causing you a lot of stress?
I enjoy when I finish and it's done and it makes sense. But as I struggle so much, it's like piss me off.
Yeah.
Myself want to just jump to the prototyping, which is my comfort zone, for a couple of days just to relax.
So the first thing that jumps out at me is that you talk like a designer, and I say that as a researcher, because I would say the same thing about doing design. It stresses, kind of more stresses me out, and like something I try to shy away from. I'm more on the research side. So, probably one of the better ways to actually handle this is starting to make the case in your company that design, UX, however you want to phrase that, is actually a team sport. And in order to really get to scale what you're doing, you need more people and more skills, right? And probably the best way to give you the ability to do the things you like the best is to get yourself a researcher, right, who you could collaborate directly with. They could provide the user input to you, and then you could really work on the design. So that would be one way to handle this situation. The other way to handle it is to go seeking new sort of research courses. From where you are, the next sort of typical step that people take is to take a class in like qualitative research techniques. So get a little bit better in doing that. I will say myself, I consider myself a mixed method researcher, which means I do both quantitative and qualitative work. Doing qualitative research well, I consider actually harder than doing quantitative research. The analysis of, the data you get from interviews and things like that is a really difficult thing. And it kind of comes from practice and working with people who are more skilled at it than you are. That's true for any of us, even me. Yeah. So, I guess of all these different options of like continuing your sort of journey of growth in UX versus trying to expand your team, what feels like it might be a little more possible in your company?
Probably the second one, which is they have been very supportive and kind of try to help me. We had a mentor, but he was more used to do research on B2C instead of B2B. So he found it very, very hard for him, even with 15 years of experience. So yeah, I think probably building up my skills will be the option right now at the company. We are still in a startup stage. So.
Yeah. So that might be a really good thing, is to talk to your manager about, to see if there's any funding available for you to continue your professional development. And, not to plug UXDI, but I believe we have a research course either out or coming to help increase that focus. If you look for courses specifically in UX research and qualitative techniques, they are, UXDI and elsewhere you can find them.
Okay.
Owen, do you have something to
add? Not really. That really does sound more like kind of issues within the organization, whereas I suppose my expertise is really more on the recruitment side, so I really can't offer too much insight there.
Mm-hmm.
Just on that, I might jump in here. Owen, you actually mentioned something really interesting recently about graphic designers and how they feel like their background doesn't relate to UX, when really they've got a lot of the hard skills.
Yeah, it's actually true. A lot of graphic designers do tend to second guess their skill set in general. So that, in terms of the transferable skills and the experience that they've already built up within design teams in particular, that does give a bit of a head start in terms of getting used to how an organization acts, particularly with regards to kind of the UX design teams. A lot of it is built on similar foundations. So that is one thing that I would always kind of stress, is that if you are coming from any design background, you already have a head start in terms of careers. You can leverage that into essentially experience from that perspective. Obviously, it's a bit different on the research side, but definitely on the design side, there's a strong foundation there.
Cool. Does that help, Irene?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, we might take 2 more people to come on, and while they're joining, I've got some great questions here in the background, so I'll share one of those right now. Danica is asking, how can you assure employers you are a sure bet versus someone who has a pure digital background? And how can you frame your transferable skills in a competitive way?
Yeah, really good questions. So sure bet. I don't know that there is such a thing as a sure bet, to be perfectly honest, right? The challenge in, and I can talk about this both as someone who interviews and someone who has hired, right? I am consistently surprised at how much more vulnerable you feel in hiring people than you do when you're interviewing. And I think all of us would agree that when we're interviewing for a position, that is an inherently vulnerable thing to do, right? You feel like you're being judged. It's really tough. You're trying to put your best foot forward. You're afraid you're going to screw up, and you feel a ton of rejection if they say no, right? On the flip side of that, if you have a team, the challenge in UX is that because we all have such a diversity of skills, what that means when you're trying to put a team together is that you really need like specific skill sets to kind of lock in and complement the people you already have on your team. And that can be a really, really difficult thing to do. So, if it's totally possible that you see lots of really great people, but there's something about their skills. Either they don't have enough differentiated skills or they're overlapping other team members. It doesn't take away from you at all when that happens. You're still a great resource, but you're not exactly filling the need that the team as a whole has. So I just want to point that out because, I think so many of us, particularly early in our career, don't realize that like hiring is an incredibly stressful thing, and trying to find that really precise match in a team that is highly interdependent like UX can be a tough thing. So I just wanted to point that out. So in terms of like kind of letting people know, I would say it really has to do with how you interview, like how you talk about the experiences you have, right? do you just kind of walk through, first I did this, then I did this, then I did this, right? Or are you really telling a story, right? Are you enthusiastic about it? Does it come through that you really were focused on, I knew that my user group was highly stressed in this situation. So my design goal was to relieve that stress. And here's how I did that. Are you able to really relate elements of design to the needs of users? That, I think, is a key skill in interviewing that a lot of people don't do. They can talk about their design and say, oh, I put this together and it looks all great and hooray, hooray. But when you ask them, okay, what need was this filling? They often can't articulate that, right? So if I had to really tease out what is the core thing that sort of differentiates people who come across as much more adept at UX work than others, it's their ability to kind of match up. This was a need, therefore I did this design and here's how it worked out, right? So telling that story arc is really, really important. So I would challenge all of you to go back to the projects, especially those that are in your portfolio, and go, am I giving lots of mumbo jumbo, or am I drawing a straight line between need, design, and results? That's the key story. Owen, for recruiting, what would you say?
Okay, so sorry, can we have the question back up there? I kind of missed it there. It's dropped off. Okay, so basically, in terms of sure bet, I'd agree there is no such thing. It really is a case that, I suppose really putting yourself forward, you may actually find that you have some domain-specific knowledge that can actually be leveraged for the role, particularly if the company or the design studio itself is actually working in a particular space. So if you have a marketing background and there is a specific focus in marketing, you can actually kind of leverage that prior experience in terms of actually, putting yourself forward and maybe standing out a little bit from the competition. It's very much like what Melanie said there, in that you actually kind of have to find what niche you fill as well, and what differentiates you from the rest of the team in order to actually fill a gap, or I suppose a role that team specifically needs. You may actually find that is coming from your background knowledge. It may be from your technical expertise. So all I can really do is really back up what Melanie has already said. But in terms of that, you can find some previous experience that does set you apart from the competition. No two candidates are ever the same. So that does mean that there is always going to be something that helps you stand out. It's just basically marketing that. Once again, though, I would definitely back up. One of the things that we do look for in recruitment as well is kind of how you are actually telling that story, how you're actually showcasing the needs and how you've addressed those needs and showing the end result. Obviously, UX is really about solving problems for people, not so much for companies per se, although balancing the business need is important as well. But
cool. I think we will invite some more people to join us. So I've got our people here, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Sule, but hopefully you can correct me. Okay.
I feel like we should be playing music for like an interlude or something.
Like suspense music. Okay.
That's right.
So I'll ask Valentina to join as well.
Awesome. So while she's joining, Arpita, how about if you go and correct us for pronunciation? Are we saying that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. You are saying it correctly. It's Arpita.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about your background and your question.
Yes, actually, I'm an Indian, but I'm living in the UK for last 3 years. So in India, I used to work as a news reporter in a 24 hours news channel, and I worked there almost 6 years. And I also did some freelance writing job in several newspapers and websites. So my question is, from typical journalism field to UX field, what would be my transferable skills? What are my transferable skills? And how will I convince the recruiter that I don't have the experience, years of experience in UX field, but I have the knowledge and I have previous successful careers, so I can do this UX job. Means I can get this job and I can do it like my previous career. Means how to convince.
Okay, so Arpita, journalism, right? Journalism is all about communication, writing, telling a story, and making it consumable for people, right?
Yeah.
So many things that are important to UX. The other thing is you're working in very collaborative teams to do that. I mean, typically, and were you print journalism or?
No, I was in a news channel, which is the 24 hours news channel. So it was like all of that. It means we used to have a team, and I used to collect news and research on the topic and interviewing people and writing copy for the news. So it's like a compacting to make the news capsule.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to invite our smart audience here to start listing in the chat. What skills are you hearing that Arpita has in her role as a journalist that could translate to UX? So what I'm hearing is, writing is definitely a natural transition point for you. So content developer, even copywriter would be great. I would encourage you to do a little research in speech technology as well, because from a design perspective, what speech technology is all about is writing scripts, which is a really natural transition point for your skills. I did, what was that, Kelly, maybe you remember, I think it was in July, I did a whole insider on speech technology. So that Kelly and her team can point you to that if you didn't get to see it. So speech technology design, content development are all natural jobs. The fact, and lots of people are picking this up as well, research, the fact that you are good at interviewing. Interview is a primary technique and primary qualitative technique in research. And so I guess what I'd also encourage you to think about is in your portfolio, how could you display some of the skills that you bring, like from previous projects, maybe even in journalism? Like, do you have any projects that you could write up in a more UX kind of case study way?
Yeah, I can do that, but I don't have the audiovisual means capsule, but I can write it up, those things that I can do, but I don't have that on those things, means those news capsule actually.
Okay, well, I would encourage you to just like maybe be creative and think about how you could, write that up and demonstrate what you did in the context of a broadcast, because there's a lot of elements there that you could connect to, like video is obviously used a lot now in various types of technology. The other like sort of natural transition point for you is also thinking about UX not as a change in field, but as an overlay on your journalism skills, right? So I would encourage you, Arpita, what is the sort of connection between UX and journalism that could provide a stepping stone for you into a full UX job? Can you think of a way to combine those things?
Research, obviously, because I used to do that, and I think I'm good at it. And the thing is analysis, because I used to do that in my news things, like what can be the news, or what my viewers wants to hear or see. So this kind of thing, and so differentiating between information. These are the things. Yeah, and I'm not good at designing because I'm just learning this in the process. So I think these are the things, and the communication, of course, because yeah, I can talk to people like I can. I have the listening thing, that I can listen and I can understand what they want to say or what they want to get from the product or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so research roles would seem like a really natural stepping stone. So I would really encourage you to think about a case study you could write up, a previous project you have that you can write up in more of a UX way and add to your portfolio, just to be able to talk about, here are some of your transitional skills that you've developed in your previous roles, but really apply to UX work as well. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah,
Oh, and
I got the point now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to add,
Yeah,
Owen?
I do actually. In terms of something that I'm not sure many people in the chat have noticed as well, is that like one of your transferable skills that you probably haven't identified is the fact that you can work in a fast-paced and high-pressure environment, and that definitely is like from a recruitment perspective, that's like gold dust. It's a skill that you build up with experience, and working in a 24-hour newsroom, having to work to very, very tight deadlines and actually get your copy on the air within maybe even the space of half an hour sometimes.
Yeah.
This is a valuable skill that really does need to be emphasized. So in terms of a transferable skill, that's a really excellent one to actually include. And it's something that a lot of people do overlook when they think about their careers and think about the type of jobs that they've had in the past,
Yeah, great point.
Great point, I guess. Thank you. Thanks so much. Yes.
Awesome. Hi, Valentina. Can you
Hi.
tell us a little bit about your background and your question?
Yes. Hi, my name is Valentina. I come from Italy, but I live and work in Germany in the pharmaceutical logistics sector. So nothing to do with UX design, but I have a background as team leader. My job is more about monitoring, critical thinking, customer support, communication, intern and also extern, so not only with customer but also with my colleague, so and with the IT. I have to work under pressure and I have to solve problems for the customer and for my company. So this is my background. I did a UX design course in the past. And I have also a finished project. But I would like to know which kind of skills, how can I improve a bit more? Because I gave myself 10 months to change my job. So I'm in transition. And I think I have a lot of background, not related with UX design, but it can maybe help to find a new job in this direction, but I'm not sure exactly how many projects I have to have in my portfolio, or which kind of skills I can improve. I don't know. I also speak a lot of languages, 5 languages, and also Japanese and Russian a bit. So I don't know if I can improve something more.
Yeah, so again, I'm going to invite our audience to add the skills you're hearing Valentina speak of that she has that could be really important for UX. What I'm hearing, Valentina, is you do have a ton of skills, right? You also, from being multilingual, to running a team, working in high pressure, being collaborative, right? All of these things, really important in UX and any business, right? In my mind, that makes you eligible for a lot of different types of roles. So I guess what I'm curious about is, to what extent you mentioned the pharmaceutical industry. I'm curious to what extent you like that industry.
I like the industry, but yes, maybe I would like to work in this direction. So healthcare. Yes.
Okay, fabulous.
Because of course is what I know. So of course for me it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the major benefit for you in pharmaceuticals and healthcare is that you also have a strong knowledge base. So in addition to all of these skills that we're talking about, right? Healthcare is a field that requires a super strong knowledge base. And so pharmaceuticals, like every company, has been transformed by technology, right? So they're constantly trying to incorporate technology. I can tell you from my own experience, I would say easily about half of the projects I've done over the last couple of years have been for pharmaceuticals or in the healthcare industry. UX is really growing in that field. Sometimes you'll see it referred to more as human factors, so they tend to use the older term. But, you know, particularly pharmaceuticals are looking for ways to engage patients through mobile apps. Earlier this year, I did a project on an Alexa skill specifically for patients who wanted to ask questions that way about their medication, right? So I would really encourage you, you know, and I think we said this earlier, don't think of UX as a different field. Think of it as an overlay of skills on the skills you already have, right?
Okay.
And in my mind, what that makes you eligible for is all kinds of roles in the pharmaceutical industry that, you know, it could be UX designer, it could be a researcher, it could also be a business analyst, a team lead, right? There's a lot of different roles where you could have UX influence and be encouraging the business to look at things in a more user-centered way, right? But you don't have to always do that from a role that has UX in the title. In fact, you might even be more influential if you had a different title, right? That's sometimes the way it works internally. So, you know, if you think about your UX as that kind of overlay or additional skill set, can you think of a role in healthcare, pharmaceutical kind of company that you might like to have, that you think it would just make you that more competitive in a role that you're already kind of familiar with?
Well, I will say UX strategist.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Because
so,
one of my, sorry, I mean, I also sell to the customer, and I will say I'm good. So for me, strategies will be the right way, or team leader like before.
Yeah, for sure. You know, sales, a lot of salespeople I've worked with, like if they take a UX orientation, like there's some natural synergy there between sales, right? Because oftentimes, particularly in healthcare, you're talking about what's the impact of this medical device or this pharmaceutical on the patient, right? And UX, or human factors, in the context of healthcare is really about, first, patient safety, and then second, quality of life, right? And so your ability to provide that focus and orientation towards those key goals mean that you are a very strategic thinker. You can use all that problem solving to go, if we're doing a project of any type, right? What is the impact of patients of this project? You know, whether it's improving the website, whether it's creating a mobile app, whether it's, you know, doing any kind of strategy related to technology, because they're trying to engage with their patient community through technology, which makes you a fantastic resource to do that.
Okay.
Owen?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of that, I can see, as Melanie said, a huge variety of roles that you would actually be really well suited for based on your experience and based on the UX knowledge. But in particular, I would say, you do have kind of leadership qualities, which is something that a lot of companies look to cultivate anyway. They look for signs of this when you're actually being hired for a position. It's actually, if I think back to Google, like one of the key things that they actually look for in their interviews is Googliness and leadership, and that's how you can interact with a team. That's how you can actually lead, but not necessarily be the boss. You can actually influence the team by example, essentially. And it sounds like you actually have built up that skill set in your current role as well. So,
Yes.
very, very much, I think there are a lot of transferable skills I'm seeing there in terms of your background that would be, very, very interesting for most companies. But there, as Melanie said, there are a wealth of roles that you would actually be a good fit for, particularly the ones focused on research because of the problem solving ability that you have. You are working in a
Yes.
high pressure environment as well.
I like to solve problems. So yes.
So
It's
I
easy.
mean, it's a key part of sort of research and analysis is actually solving those problems. So I do see a lot of very valuable skills there, but I really can't sort of add any more than Melanie has already covered there. I think anything I say would just be reiterating those points. So.
Okay, thank you.
So Valentina, and this goes for everyone, if you're thinking about your own background, right? The other point I want to make real quickly is you have a network, right? So you've been working in an industry where you now have a network, right?
Yes.
And I would really encourage you to start reaching out to your network. What often happens is when you reach out to people and go that you've been working with in an industry in some other capacity, and you suddenly go, guess what? I've also got these new skills. I've done this new thing and added to my skill set. They will go, holy cow, I want to get you on board, right?
Okay.
I know a variety of different UXDI students that is happening to right now. So your network is incredibly valuable to you. So make it be known what you have done in expanding your skill set.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope that was
definitely
helpful.
reach out to sort of people in related fields that that are in companies that you might be interested in working for as well. Quite often, I do find that a lot of the best roles aren't necessarily advertised straight away, particularly at the junior end of the spectrum. Quite often, a lot of companies don't actually invest a lot in terms of advertising those junior roles. But when you actually do reach out to your network, quite often you will actually hear of good opportunities that might be a really good fit for you.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Nice one. We've got a great question here from Morgan, so I might pop that up on screen while we're getting the next people. And I think this might be a good one for you in particular. And the question is, what are the key things that hiring managers are looking for in someone transitioning into UX? What are things we can do to increase our chances of getting the first interview and avoid getting screened out?
Okay, so that's actually an excellent question. So I can't say for certain that there is one or two key things that hiring managers are looking for, but definitely when changing roles, what they're looking for is relevant experience. It doesn't actually have to be design experience or anything like that, but what they, as we've been talking about here, the transferable skills you have. But I would say one of the most important things that hiring managers have said to me time and time again is that they're looking for someone who is demonstrating that they're a lifelong learner. They're looking for someone who does have that hunger to actually move forward in the career or extend their previous experience into a new area. Like, for example, if they do have a design background but want to move into UX. But most importantly, you have to demonstrate that willingness to learn, and one of the best ways is actually continuously educating yourself. And by that, I mean, really applying what you're actually learning and showing a progress in a particular direction. So I don't mean just like taking on courses here and there that actually have no relevance, but actually showing a particular direction that you actually want to move in. That's definitely one thing that I would say a lot of hiring managers would have on top of mind, I suppose in terms of the second part of that question, it was it's dropped off the screen there, but it was on how to really kind of showcase that, was it?
How to avoid getting screened out.
Oh, how to avoid getting screened out. Well, that's an excellent one. And one of the main issues actually when you're starting to apply for roles is there is a system, well, a type of system that's actually used by a lot of companies now called an ATS, which means an applicant tracking system. And one of the key things that it does is essentially acts almost like when you're searching the web. If the right keywords aren't there, a website is not going to show up high in the search rankings. Well, it's the same with your resume or your CV. The ATS system will actually give you a percentage match as close to what the role specification is. Unfortunately, up to 75% of candidates do get screened out by ATS. So there are a couple great ways that you can actually mitigate this to a certain extent. There's no one thing that you can actually do to avoid it, because there are about 200 different ATS systems on the market. But one of the best things to do is actually compare what you actually have in terms of your CV versus what's actually on the role specification, and kind of just checking to see if the language that you're using or the terminology that they're actually highlighting in terms of the role spec actually match up. We're talking get as close to a match as possible. So if you have a particular skill and you've phrased it a particular way in your either work experience or in the skill section of your CV, you need to actually modify the language that you're using to match the terms that they're using. It may be the exact same skill, just phrased a different way. So it's very important to actually match that. I would say other things to consider when actually working through there with your CV is make sure that you're using relatively common fonts. Don't use anything overly complex or anything like that, because unfortunately ATS systems do have issues with transcribing fonts from stranger fonts or just unusual fonts that aren't in a common database, like say Google Fonts, for example. Unfortunately, that can actually send up flags saying this is not a match because it's misinterpreting what's actually written on the page. So those would be a couple of the examples there in terms of actually preventing yourself getting screened out at that stage. At the next stage, it really is more focused on kind of what you actually have on your CV, how you've framed your experience, and also kind of what you've done in terms of the projects in your portfolio. So as Melanie actually mentioned earlier, telling a story within your portfolio, really demonstrating that you actually understand what the key needs are, giving a clear example of how you're addressing those needs. That's very, very important. But I would say on your CV, in terms of framing your experience, you want to actually show not only that you have these transferable skills and how you've utilized them in different roles, but also showing how you've actually achieved key deliverables in those roles as well. We're really talking about something that does come up in UX all the time: qualitative and quantitative. You need to show kind of how you've achieved and also what you can do, or what transferable skills you have. I hope that's clear. But
nice one, thanks. Okay, so we're going to invite on Mariana and Eoghain. Again, I could be butchering your name, so apologies. Please let me know if I have done so. Okay, so
Hello.
you're joining.
Hi.
Hi. How's it
Mariana,
going,
tell us
Mariana?
a little bit about your background and your question.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mariana. I'm from Brazil, but I've been living in the Netherlands for the last 3 years. And for it's about 2 years and 1 month that I've been working in technical support. So I think it's similar to Valentina. So I work for a software company here. It's an American company, but then the headquarters are here in Amsterdam. So basically, my work is just so first of all, the software is for touristic companies. So is the ticketing system is a quite complex ticketing system. So there are a lot of functionalities, and then the clients don't know anything about the features. So I need to teach them, or I need to fix them and for them. But some stuff are easy as opening availabilities for the day, and some stuff are more complex, so changing inventory, and then they have no idea how to do that. And in 2 weeks, I'm gonna change department. I'm gonna become an account manager. So I was like quite sick of my job. I think I didn't have room to grow. So I'm changing to this department. And other than just working with clients, I also do audit. I audit my colleagues and also training them to teach the system for them. So I think I have a lot of skills related to UX, and I do like research especially, but I'm not completely sure how to like sell this idea. And also as account manager now, I think I'm gonna have a more idea regarding how to make them grow, my clients. So I will need to analyze their business and see how the feature, how the software would fit for them and make them grow. So I'm not completely sure what I could do with these 2 years of experience that I have in technical support. And also now as account manager, I'm not completely sure everything that I will learn and how I could transfer in the future. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, so I hope it makes sense.
It's all good. So first, I just want to comment, like, this is the thing about like Europeans, Brazilians, everywhere I think except for the US. Y'all are so cool moving around all these countries and doing cool stuff. I missed the boat on that somehow. But anyway, so Mariana, I agree. You have lots of great skills. You know, a lot of the things we've talked about already: leadership, team building, collaboration. That orientation toward the user, that's just sort of fundamental to what you're doing. And, you know, account management positions are actually, you know, fairly senior positions in most companies and require, you know, a good breadth of knowledge, understanding of your product, plus understanding of the business, and, you know, fairly thoroughly in order to be able to serve clients of that business. Also sounds to me like you're working with a fairly complex technology.
Yes, it's a bit complex. The client today had a client and he was like, "Oh, you teach me everything. Thank you so much." Because the other agents, they don't have patience, and I love teaching them because otherwise they will call again, you know. So I really, my focus when I'm auditing my colleagues, I give a higher score if they're teaching the clients the tool. But then he was telling me, "I hope you were the person writing the help pages." And then I would like to tell him, I hope we didn't need to have this help pages, and then the UX were better, but it's not the case.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of, you anticipated where I'm going with this, right? By being an account manager, you actually have I think, probably a better potential to influence UX of the product because you have that connection to clients, right? And more broadly for everyone listening, right? I want you to think about wherever you are right now. And Mariana, here's the question for you. How could you do that account manager job in a UX-like way?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, that's why I'm here. I don't know. Honestly, I know as a technical support, I know a lot about product. So I know way more than the account managers, for instance. So
Right.
always when they have any questions, I'm there to help them. So now that I'm going to the department, I think I'm going to be the person that has more knowledge about product. So I
Yes.
don't know, maybe if I can run some usability tests with clients, I don't know, just to make sure that they know how to close an availability. That is something pretty easy that they don't know, because it's not intuitive. They always complain for us. It's not intuitive. So we need to call support and maybe talk to account managers. And yeah, but honestly, I think I can think more strategically as account manager and how to improve their businesses and see. So I will see their website, for instance, and see how they are performing, seeing Google Analytics and the data. And also I can tell them how they can use the tool to convert more to sales, I would say. So I think this would be the main difference that I would do now,
Yeah.
But I
So what I'm gonna encourage you to do, right, is to just appoint yourself a UX advocate in your company, right? And your job as a UX advocate is to make the product you're selling as usable and motivating for clients as possible, right? So the central problem you're having, at least so far in your tenure there, is that there's lots of usability problems in the product, which is requiring extensive support for clients, right?
a lot.
Now you're in an account management, sort of more of a leadership role, right? And that means taking a strategic view of that problem. So the real question is, how can you start to document the challenges with the product, document, the impact this is having for a client, right? Is it causing them more time to learn? Is it causing them a loss of productivity? Is it causing them a loss of revenue in some form, increasing their operational costs, right? What problem is your product creating for its clients, right? That also makes them vulnerable to going to your competitors. So, if you look at that as a researcher, the job is to collect data on the usability problems that are creating all these negative outcomes for your clients, right? And then feed back into the business. Here's how we need to solve these. Here are the problems. Like, I think the first step is just sort of articulating, this is the problem we're having, and here's some data to show the impact across 2 clients, across 3 clients, across 5 clients. I mean, however many you can get, fabulous, right? Here's the commonality that our clients are telling us is wrong with our product. Here are the usability issues that are at play for them. Now, how do we resolve that, right? That becomes a very strategic discussion that needs to be elevated to the leadership level, right? But as with your background now and what you're doing, plus UX, you can take that very strategic, user-centered, in this case, client-centered approach, right? And begin to really elevate the conversation and make this a much more strategic initiative to actually improve your product. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah. My main question would be how can I have this content or data, Where is this coming from? I don't understand, because in support, I could take from Zendesk. That is the tool that we use. So we have tags. I would see the pain points, but I don't know as account manager from analytics or talking to them or how.
Both. I would say both. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say all of it, right? Like if you have systems that are providing quantitative data, I mean, typically for engineers and executives, quantitative data is more compelling than qualitative. The way I think about those 2 data types is quantitative kind of alerts, especially leadership, that there's a problem because you've translated into numbers. And then qualitative explains why, right? So what I would do if I were you is, since you have direct access to clients and apparently some of the systems you need, is try to start collecting some quantitative data from your systems, see what story you can make from that data, and then put together an interview, kind of, even like 5 interview questions to ask your clients. Get some direct quotes, right? You know how to do this from the UXDI program. Get some direct quotes, put together a story and a PowerPoint, and start to socialize it around. Figure out who your advocates are, who can come along with you and help you on this mission, right?
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, you are the UX advocate. You can do it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I do love it. Yeah, I didn't think about the quotes. Like, I do love this idea. I think it can work. I was talking to a product designer, and then she was telling me the company is huge. There are 600 people working for this company, and the product designer said that she's the only one that she needs to do UX. So it's insane because the company is huge, and then I was like, wow. And then she said that she would like to communicate more. So I think she could be my point as well, if she's available,
Right. And if you look between the lines of what she's saying to you, she's looking for someone with the authority internally to be able to communicate and bring her concerns forward, right? And she's now looking to you as that person. So this is what I mean. Like, this is a perfect example of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, right? Of you're not specifically in a UX role, like that is not your title. On the other hand, you are in a position to have potentially more influence than the designer, right? And the two of you collaborating together can put together the data that you need to begin to tell a convincing story to your leadership. Okay, does that help?
Wow, a lot. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Awesome. All right, go forth and prosper. All right, so Yuri, is that how we say your name?
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, nice to meet you. Tell us a little bit about your background and your question.
Hi, Melanie. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Yuri. I come from Spain. I'm 31 years old. I don't have any background in UX at all. I studied advertising and public relations. And after my degree, I worked as a project manager in an advertising agency for 3 years.
Awesome.
After that, I moved to Berlin, where I'm living now, and I started working in gastronomy as I started learning German. Nice. And in the gastronomy world, I worked up for 3 years as I ended up as a team leader for one of the restaurants I worked for. After that, I moved to office management in a startup related to transportation here in Berlin. And there I basically worked, one of my main tasks was employee care, basically, and internal events for the company. The company is about 400 employees at the moment. And well, after the pandemic, I became a father. So I used my parental leave to make a career change. That's when I enrolled the course. And well, basically, my main question would be, I'm aware that I have a lot of user-centered experience, but absolutely. I'm a little bit afraid of like making the step of starting to work in the UX world. Because I'm a little bit underrating myself on like, I'm hesitating on how much this soft skills that I have are important when coming from stereotypically known these low class positions where I'm coming from, let's say. How important is this, and how am I going to be able to make the jump to a technology world, let's say?
Yeah, and it's funny that you're interpreting your experience as kind of, you use the word low class kind of experiences, because I was not hearing that at all as you were talking. Maybe folks, if you agree with me, please put it in the chat, right? I was not hearing kind of low level. I was hearing a lot of adaptability, flexibility, someone who learns quickly, can move industries, and I'm going to say like own it, right? When I introduce myself, the first thing I tend to say is I have really eclectic background, and it might not appear to make sense, but I'm going to help you understand what the thread is that goes through all of my experiences, right? That's how I start out. That's how I start out in an interview situation too, right? And I talk about, in my case, it's a quote about communication that has sort of inspired my whole career and all of my changes. And I make that connection for people. And I think even just in telling that story, right? So that's a really different way of displaying, you know, who you are, right? In my case, it's like, yeah, look, it looks crazy. It's all over the place. But that's a very different approach than going, first I was this, first I was that, then I did this, and then I had this job, right? So I would say just, you know, use some of your creativity and go, what is the story? Like, what have you been searching for in your career? What has propelled all these changes? So just, I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but I mean, what's your knee-jerk reaction about what's kind of made you do all this stuff?
I guess the search to find what I really like. I mean, I see connections on all the jobs that I've been doing, and I came to the conclusion that these connections are that I like to work either for or related to people. So I know that I am probably is where I feel confident or I feel comfortable with, where I feel that I'm doing something for someone. So I guess that's what's keep connecting me in all the changes I've been doing.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, just even that theme, right, of seeking ways to understand and serve people, right? Amazing story, right? And a really different message than I just worked all these low-level kind of jobs, right? And it seems to me that UX is a natural continuation of that path too, right? Because it's another way to understand and really explore what are people about, right? So I guess the first thing I would challenge you with is that, right? Sort of thinking about from the perspective of a storyteller, you know, how can you tell your story in a concise but really interesting way? Because that's going to be what compels people. And then, you know, I also heard a little bit of fear in there around this whole UX thing. Am I picking that up correctly?
Definitely.
Okay. And that's totally natural. All of us feel that. I mean, going back 20 years, I was like, is this the dumbest thing I've ever done? Right? Like, no lie. I mean, at that point, there were almost no women in tech. And, you know, I was joining a giant company. I was at IBM, joining IBM, and I came from a little town that was the name of a street. I mean, it was just, this is insane, right? So having said that, if you kind of accept that everybody feels that anxiety about joining, you know, doing something new, regardless of what it is, what are you kind of looking for in UX? Like, what do you think you're sort of naturally drawn to?
Yeah, as I said, I do believe that the fact that UX is much about finding people's problems and solve them, or basically just improving people's life a little bit. I think that's what I feel attracted about UX. And I guess this is what made me join this course. And actually UX was kind of always in the back of my mind somehow. I guess there was always like a big wall in front of me, because I think I was not brave enough to make the change, because the fact that the UX was inside of a technology world, this was always like so scared to me. I always felt like I'm not part of this world. Like I don't belong here. This is I could not relate to the world, let's say, no. But as I finished the course, I realized that I actually have a lot of things in common, things that I can bring on. And I guess I just have to like go over this fear of, okay, no worries, it's going to be fine. You're going to find your place in this world.
You will. Yeah, you will. And I'm just going to really encourage you, right? Because what I'm seeing is someone who is empathetic, sensitive, articulate, intelligent, right? All of those things are core skills for UX, right? So I think, recognizing that you have this intimidation because it's technology and it's this thing, right? The really great thing now that I couldn't have said even 10 years ago, certainly not 20 years ago, is that the sort of humanization of technology in every industry is kind of recognized now, right? And part of the sort of larger conversation of technology. So, I would say it's really about just kind of owning your story. So I'm going to encourage you to start there, own your story, and put your elevator pitch together. That's what I like to call the 2-sentence, this is who I am kind of thing. It's called elevator pitch because, as the elevator doors are shutting, right, you have to be able to say it. So really think about, and maybe the starting point is around like solving problems for people and this sort of thing you've been seeking in your whole career, and make that connection for anyone you talk to. So start there, and I think probably the rest will flow for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Owen, do you have something else you would want to add?
No, to be honest, I was actually seeing a lot of commonalities in your experiences across the board. I mean, one thing that hit me straight away was the fact that you started out in marketing and PR, which, to my mind, that actually has a lot of direct relevance in that you are actually trying to understand people first and foremost.
Tell a story.
And then, and then the next point when you actually moved on to working in gastronomy, it's like that straight away to me is that's all about experience. It's all about how everything is presented. It is all about how the ambience of the restaurant, the overall feeling, particularly if it's sort of on the high end of gastronomy, it is really an experience for the customer. Everything has to be perfect. Everything from the flavors through to the presentation and just the entire atmosphere. So I can see this thread that is actually pointing in this direction towards UX. Just as Melanie said, it is this common thread all the way through. So that's what I'd say in terms of framing your experiences, much like Melanie's already addressed there, is really kind of telling that story, telling what has actually drawn you there and what step has led to the next. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had there.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, great to meet both of you, Mariana, Yere. Best wishes to you.
Thank you so much.
All the best.
Okay, cool. So what's next? So I'm just going to let you know we've got just about 8 minutes left. So did you have a plan for the last part of this, Melanie, or will we continue?
I don't know. I think I'm good with more questions. I guess I want to point out too, Yere, if you're still listening, and for anyone else who's really feeling the stress of the whole, transition, one of our recent UX Insider topics was imposter syndrome. So I did that one, and we talked all about that terrible feeling of being an imposter or doing something that you feel really kind of uncomfortable about at the same time that you're doing it. So we've had some really good feedback on that session. So I would really encourage you to go find that thing and watch, because I think that might also just give you a little bit more specific on that topic as well. Just a little plug. Sounds self-serving. It's really not supposed to be.
No, it's great. It's great. And for anyone who hasn't seen those UX Insider talks yet, you'll find them in the events announcements Slack channel.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got this
announcements.
Events announcements, yeah. So we've got the question with the most upvotes. I think it's fair to answer that one next. So
Yeah.
I'll bring it up here. So Ali is asking, is it realistic to expect to have your first UX design job not as a junior? Obviously, this is subject to past experiences, etc. I wonder if without years of experience as a UX designer, starting from the bottom may be necessary and therefore reflected in your salary.
Phew, that is a good question. Of course, you qualified that by subject to past experience. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's really, really going to depend on, right? Is your past experience, I would say, is definitely part of that. But the question is, like, what kind of past experience? Because I think that, when you start to talk about being more of a senior, whether it's designer or researcher, right? What you really start to talk about are these soft skills. I hate calling them that too, but like all of these other things we're talking about, communication, presence, just your personal kind of professionalism, right? All of these things become more and more important and it's really about how you present yourself, right? Are you concise yet interesting with your communication style? Are you able to command an audience? Are you able to bring people around to your way of thinking, right? Which is a huge part of being a UX person and doing it at the senior level, like being able to get people to do stuff that they don't necessarily want to do, right? Because it's better for users. And sometimes, like, the people that you're trying to compel are engineers, and it's going to mean a lot more development for them, a lot more late night coding for them, or for senior leadership, it's going to mean more investment in product development, right? So how can you, just by the force of your personality, your communication style, the storytelling you're able to do, how can you get those people to come along and go, yeah, this is the right thing, even though there's going to be this cost? All that stuff becomes really, really important. Your ability to communicate. So I sort of wrap all those things up into emotional intelligence. So, I think that is the real distinction between junior and senior designers and researchers. Now, of course, the longer you're in the field, the more skills you're going to pick up, the more things you're going to feel real comfortable with. When you're senior, you're also getting really comfortable by that point with the tools, whether it's Figma or, for someone like me, being able to do statistical analysis or, numeric analysis of hard data or combine complex data to tell a story. All of these things also will be improving. But I think what really differentiates, particularly in an interview process, is how you're able to answer questions. And it's a really interesting balance between being concise, knowing what you're talking about, but also being empathetic and personable and compelling. Owen, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree. It is a case of, like, it is being very subjective in terms of what that experience is. I mean, what I would say is, in most cases, I would say really starting at the bottom is going to be more beneficial for most cases. There is a lot to learn within a design team, for example. There's a lot to learn within a particular domain. And particularly with regards to sort of methodologies you're using, it is always a constant learning curve. So I would say having the benefit of having someone more senior actually help you along the path is definitely a strong advantage. I wouldn't necessarily say that jumping into, say, a mid-level role is going to be a good idea for most people. But if you do have previous experience that does relate to it, if you have actually a research background, for example, and you're moving into UX, this can be something that can be done. Just in most cases, I would definitely say having the support in place that someone in a junior role would actually have is going to be a better asset. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to move on quick within the design team as well, though. I have seen people actually go on accelerated paths within a team, maybe spend 6 months to a year as a junior, and then suddenly they're mid-level because they do have a reasonable amount of experience. But I mean, I can understand the reluctance in terms of the initial salary when you're starting out as a junior. It can be a bit of a pay drop if you're coming from another industry, for example, and that can actually be something that causes a bit of nervousness. But I would say ultimately it is worth it, because you can actually end up accelerating your career faster if you actually have that strong foundation from a senior team member being a mentor. So
yeah, if it's okay, Kelly, I'd also like to answer this in a slightly different way too. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
The other thing I want to also say on this question, right, is, similar to, I think it was the question when Mariana was on, we talked about her becoming a UX advocate in the role she's already in, right? I'm going to tell you that all is a way, because I'm watching the conversation happening in the chat about minimum wage and really, taking a pay cut, right? Sometimes taking a strategic pay cut can be a good idea if you want like a very different role on your resume. I did that a couple of years ago. I took a monster pay cut in order to take a role that was a senior leadership role, right? Because at the time that felt like a good decision for me, and the role was more important to me than the salary, right? So that is a decision you can make that will end up having benefit, behind that. Okay. The other thing you can do is, in the role you're in today, go, how can I do this role like a UX person? Right? Because you don't have to have, I cannot emphasize this enough, you don't have to have UX in your title to do UX stuff, right? Whether you're a project manager, a product manager, a business analyst, any number of things. We talked about account manager. Most people in a business, there is some way to make it your focus more on the actual users of your products and services, right? And so let me give you another story of someone in a fairly junior role who did this that I know from UXDI. She was in a startup. She kind of liked her startup, and she was, I was originally talking to her about how to transition into a UX role. And she was like, how do I get this job? And I was like, well, do you like the startup you're in? And she was like, yeah, it's really great. I really like the people, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, do they have a UX team? And she was like, well, no. And so I said, well, okay, what's your role right now? She's a project manager. And I was like, oh, my friend, you were in a fantastic place to start to propose UX tasks within your projects, right? I'm like, that's all you need to start doing. And don't worry about the resources, just start to educate people that way on there's some tasks we could be doing within this project that might actually have some benefit, and then start to articulate what that benefit might be if you actually could do them. So she did. And they were like, hey, could we actually do that? And she was like, well, yeah, we could make a prototype. And their next question was, well, how would we do that? And she was like, well, I could do it. And then she came back to me and was like, oh my God, now I have to make a prototype. And I'm like, go on, do it. Right? And so we kind of worked through that, and she was thrilled. She took it back to her team. They loved it, right? Then they're like, well, what do we do next? And she's like, well, we could do a usability test. And they were like, great, let's do it. And then she came back to me and she was like, oh my God, they said, let's do it. What do I do? Right. So we worked through that. She proposed the usability test. They were like, great, do it. Right. So this woman has worked herself into a PM/UX role, exactly where she sits, for exactly the same salary. Right. She's the only one doing this right now. And part of her mission was just to start becoming an advocate and doing it where she sits today. Any of you can do that. UX is in every industry, every company. There's some connection to technology, products, services, making them better, getting input from real people, customers, users, whoever they are, right? So I'm just going to say, go for it. Totally go for it and see what you can do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, Melanie. I have to say as well, there are other areas that people don't think about as well when it comes to the application of UX. Keeping in mind it can actually be applied to physical products, or even, if every time I think of it, I look at IKEA, and the layout of their stores is very, very much a user flow. It is, it's all been designed to give choices in terms of the quickest route from the beginning to the end, and also longer routes around where people can engage with more products. So there's always an application for UX, and I suppose the really important part to mention that backs up exactly what Melanie has been saying is that UX started like this. UX didn't exist in the wild. It wasn't an academic discipline that was suddenly adopted. It was individuals within companies advocating for the users and sort of bringing into place this methodological approach that it was only really adopted as a result of demonstration. So that's definitely what everyone needs to do in order to actually develop UX within their organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely how I got to where I am today. Is I was hired, didn't know anything at the time. Nobody knew what I did. I didn't even know what I did. And I just started going how do I figure this out in place? And I did. And it's now almost 22 years later. So if I can do it, trust me when I say you guys can all do it exactly where you're sitting today.
Lovely. Thank you. On that note, on that lovely, inspiring note, I think we'll leave it here today. So Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, everyone who took part and came online with us today. And a special thank you to all the students who encouraged each other in the chat section just there. And I'd really encourage those who joined on the call to have a watch of the recording and see the lovely messages your colleagues, your workmates, fellow students have left for you in there, because it's really nice, really inspiring.
Yeah, and a quick shout out to everyone who decided to come and join us today. I know it's a little scary, but hooray for your courage, right? It bodes well for you in UX. So go forth and prosper, y'all.
Absolutely. Right, well, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.